Hello and welcome. For the last 20 years or so, our whole understanding of polycystic ovary syndrome has been, well, it's been turned on its head. We've gone from just managing symptoms to really getting at the complex biology underneath. So in this explainer, we're going to cut right to the chase and look at the three biggest paradigm shifts in PCOS research, the stuff that's really changing how we'll be diagnosing and managing this in our clinics going forward. Now, we all see PCOS in our daily practice, right? But the sheer scale of it, it's still kind of staggering. 1 in 7 women worldwide. That makes it one of the most common endocrine disorders we're ever going to manage. And a number like that, well, it really drives home just how critical it is to stay on top of the latest research. It directly impacts our patient outcomes. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with a quick look back at how we've defined PCOS, then jump into the genomic revolution. After that, we'll talk about these new reproductive versus metabolic subtypes, and then the really interesting story of AMH, how it went from just a marker to a potential driver. And we'll wrap up by looking ahead at the future of precision and prevention. All right, let's get into it. First up, PCOS redefined. To really get a feel for where we're going, we have to start with where we've been, the old paradigm. Okay, so we all know the Rotterdam criteria from 2003 like the back of our hand, right? It's been our clinical workhorse for 2 decades. You need 2 out of 3, hyperandrogenism, oligo or anovulation, or polycystic ovarian morphology. And look, it's been useful for sure, but we've all seen the biggest drawback, the incredible heterogeneity it creates. We end up lumping together this huge, diverse group of patients, which honestly has made it really tough to figure out what's actually going on underneath. And that brings us to the first massive shift, the genomic revolution. This is where science really started to peel back the layers, shifting the focus from just looking at symptoms to digging into the actual genes. So look at this timeline. Things really kicked off in 2011 with that first big GWAS from Chen and his team. That study was the catalyst. It really opened the floodgates. Just 3 years later, we had pinned down a specific gene variant, DNND1A-V2, and showed it directly promotes androgen production. And then boom, a year after that, the picture got even bigger, pulling in genes for the FSH and insulin receptors. So let's drill down on that first GWAS. It flagged 3 really important genetic locations. The first one, LH-CGR, wasn't a huge surprise. It confirmed what we suspected about LH signaling and androgen excess. The third, DNND1A, also pointed straight at androgen production. But the second one, TADHA, now that was fascinating. It had already been linked to type 2 diabetes. And just like that, we had a genetic thread directly tying metabolic problems into the PCOS story. So why does this matter? Well, this wasn't just some interesting finding for researchers. For us, in the clinic, this was huge. It was the first solid genetic proof of what we see in our patients every single day, that deep connection between the reproductive side and the metabolic side of PCOS. It finally gave us a molecular basis for this incredibly complex syndrome. Okay, so once you have that genetic foundation, what's the next logical step? Well, that's our second big shift, using that data to create more precise patient subgroups. We're moving beyond the broad Rotterdam phenotypes. This is where things get really practical. A key study in 2020 by Dapis and the team took data from almost 1,000 women and let the data speak for itself. And what they found wasn't just the same old Rotterdam groups. Instead, 2 really distinct subtypes emerged. You have a reproductive cluster, which is all about hormones, high LH, high estradiol, and a strong link to FSHB gene variants. And then you have a metabolic cluster, defined by obesity, insulin resistance, and a genetic link to adiposity. And this quote nails it. This work provided an empirical, genotype-supported taxonomy that contrasts with the broad Rotterdam phenotypes. What does that really mean? It means we're moving away from a checklist of symptoms, which can be pretty broad, and toward a classification that's actually grounded in biology and genetics. It's a huge leap from just describing what we see to understanding why we see it. So, what's the clinical takeaway here? This is the big one. This work is what paves the way for real personalized medicine in PCOS. I mean, just imagine it, being able to tailor your therapy, knowing whether you should focus more on the hormonal imbalance for one patient or go straight after insulin resistance in another, all based on their dominant biological pathway. All right, on to our third big shift. And this one might be the most surprising of all. It's about a biomarker we all use, anti-Müllerian hormone, or AMH.
we're now seeing its role evolve from just being a simple marker to potentially being a key driver of PCOS, starting from the very beginning.
For years, right, we thought of AMH as just a stand-in for polycystic ovarian morphology, a useful lab value. But then this incredible study in mice came out in 2018 from Tada's group, and it proposed this wild causal chain. They showed that if a mother has too much AMH during pregnancy, it could actually reprogram the fetal brain, specifically the GnRH neurons, and set the stage for the offspring to develop the classic signs of PCOS later in life. The implication of this for us is, well, it's profound. This is some of the strongest evidence we have for the prenatal programming of PCOS. It suggests the whole thing might have developmental origins. And if that's true, it opens up a brand new therapeutic window, the chance for early life intervention, maybe even prevention. Okay, so we've got genomics, we've got new subtypes, and we've got these incredible insights into developmental origins. Let's pull all three of these threads together and see what the next couple of decades could actually look like in our clinics. This projected timeline gives us a pretty tangible roadmap. I mean, in the next 5 to 10 years, routine molecular classification could just become standard practice. After that, we could be looking at AI-guided risk scores that pull in genomics, metabolomics, all of it. And looking further out, we could actually be using preventative strategies in high-risk pregnancies, all based on this new understanding of developmental programming. When you boil it all down, the future of PCOS care is all about precision. It's about using molecular subtypes to guide therapy, using early life diagnostics to try and prevent the disease, and even looking at new targets like the gut-brain-ovary axis. And of course, it's going to involve new digital tools. And this is absolutely critical, making sure we expand this research to include all the diverse ethnic populations we see in our practices. And all of this, everything we've talked about, is building towards one single ultimate goal: a complete fundamental shift in how we approach PCOS. We need to move away from just reacting to symptoms and move toward a model of care that is predictive, personalized, and, the holy grail, preventive. So, as we finish up here, I want to leave you with a question to think about. Armed with these powerful new insights into the genetics, the subtypes, the developmental origins of PCOS, how are you going to start shifting your own practice away from that reactive model and towards one that's truly predictive, personalized, and preventive? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.